Good morning. Welcome to Ramblings with Joe. Kind of left you in a cliffhanger at the last episode. I had been kind of woken up to a new faith. I just hadn't figured out what that faith was yet. If you haven't listened to the last episode, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it if you want to hear the whole story. My recap won't do that justice. Also, the video, my wife seems to have really enjoyed the video. I added some AI generated images kind of showing what I was talking about. I may do that again today. We'll see what kind of time I have this morning. I have an early day. It's Monday, and Mondays are always early. So I was searching. I had already decided that there was a creator and that I was now in pursuit of where the creator wanted me to go, and how he wanted me to worship, and what group I should be a part of. It's strange. That group thing, that whole group mentality, that team spirit, the ability for the human being to grasp onto a belief and then encourage all other human beings to come to your belief and follow you in that belief. It's a really strong pull that we have to do that. I recognized that long before I was an atheist, and while I was an atheist, it was re-emphasized to me that this is something that is kind of built into our spirit and into our minds, our mindset, our psyche. And I was really having a difficult time. I had one friend telling me that this was a demon that was trying to steal my soul, and I had to follow him. And I had another friend who was telling me that it was an angel telling me to wake up and come to his church. And it was a real conundrum to me, because I wasn't even sure that either one of these guys was the way I wanted to go. So yeah, big decisions had to be made. Quite possibly the biggest decision that any of us ever make in our lives. What faith to follow, how to proceed forward. And the decision was very difficult because there were people that I loved, many, many faiths, and they were all pulling me in their direction, always trying to emphasize that their faith was the one true faith. So I started ruling out faiths. I started ruling out religion. But I had to eliminate the faiths that were not, number one, logical to me, and number two, didn't follow the tenet, singular there, of love for your fellow mankind. There were a few other criteria that I went down the list with, and one of those criteria was exclusivity. I couldn't be a member of a church that, for instance, the Westboro, I think it's the Westboro Baptist Church, that style of preaching, that style of church that preached, I'm sure in their eyes they think they're preaching love, but really what they're preaching is hate and exclusivity. And I couldn't be a party to that. I can't think that there's a creator who created us and loves us and then decided that this small group of people are his people and everybody else is doomed to hell. Those kind of churches I had to put behind me fairly quickly. Those kind of churches, ones where the preachers were preaching doom and gloom, and if you don't follow my church, you are bound to be damned in hell for eternity, and those were hard to even contemplate, much less choose. So I had to put those churches behind me. And the list kept getting smaller. Then I had to choose a church. Well, I have to admit, early on, I was very influenced by the Christian belief. And the Christian belief is if you don't, that Christ is the only way to heaven. So I delved pretty deep into that. I had a Catholic background, and that seemed to go nicely, fit hand in hand with that. And fairly soon I realized that a lot of these churches, a lot of the regular goers to these churches, they really bothered me. They weren't true to the intent of the word that they preach. This is really where the religion, the saying that I started using in my mind, that religion leads me away from itself. So if I go into your church, and I don't care about feelings when I go into your church. If I go into your church, I know that there's going to be some feelings of euphoria because of the community aspect of it. A lot of churches use this. A lot of churches will bring you down to the front and celebrate you coming to their church. And that gives you that feeling of euphoria. And then they play off that and try and tell you that this is proof that you're in the right place. This is proof that this is the church that you belong in. I caught on to that trick while I was in the Navy, going from church to church, just checking them out. I caught on to that trick pretty quick. And yes, I do use the word trick because it is my personal belief that that's what they're doing. They're manipulating the people that they want to join the church, which is pretty much everybody with a pocketbook or a pocket wallet, whatever. Those churches who were kind of using that scheme of manipulation, I had to put those aside. My list kept getting shorter and shorter. At one point, I was back to the Catholic Church. And it wasn't because I thought the Catholic Church was perfect. I have a pretty good knowledge of how the Catholic Church works and what their beliefs are and how the catechism of the Catholic Church is taught. I had a very well-grounded belief in a very well-grounded education, Catholic-wise. And I understand that there are a lot of people who are upset at the Catholic Church and the pedophilia that went on for many years. And I had to put that aside fairly quickly, too, because when I did the research on that, it turns out there's the pedophilia in the Catholic Church is just as rampant as it was in the Protestant churches or the Boy Scouts, or it was pretty much standard fare for any pedophile to go to a church or to the Boy Scouts or a position of leadership over children. That's where they go. So it could have been a Protestant preacher. And this is a huge aside. That didn't come into play in my decision. But eventually I had to back out of the Catholic Church as well. And this kind of worked nicely. My wife at one point was going to Catholic Church, and I started going back with her. And you can get caught up very quickly in your old routines that make you feel like you are part of that community and part of something bigger. And eventually, I started not feeling real good about that because I knew that this was not for me. So I had to put the Catholic Church aside, and I was done with the Catholic Church. We'll come back to what being done with means. This left a gaping hole within my spiritual community. It ended up just being me, standing there looking at all these faiths, thinking none of these are for me, and that I couldn't attend them with a true heart. I couldn't go to a Presbyterian church and sit in their pews and believe what they were teaching. Parts of it were true. I mean, any church that preaches has parts of it that preach love for your fellow man and kindness and charity. Well, obviously, those parts are very important to any community, not just a church. So I came to respect the idea that the people going to these churches were good people, for the most part. Every once in a while you get a bad preacher. I'm not going to start listing names. I got 3 right off the top of my head that I'm just going to leave. You do have bad people in leadership roles occasionally, and those people you have to be very wary of. I dealt with one, and I walked away from him. He was very manipulative, and I realized very quickly that this is not someone who I can ever respect or learn from, because he's going to continue to try and manipulate me. So I walked away. But the idea that I had to pick one of these churches, and without fail, every one of them would say, if you walk away after being revealed the truth, and usually the Christian ones would say the truth of the word, you're walking away from Christ. And they kept saying this over and over again. This was the stick part of the stick and the carrot. I learned I'm not going to be intimidated by someone who can't prove to me that they are in the church that God has decided is the right church. I'm not going to be intimidated by that person. And I would walk away. I would be done with that church. And it didn't bother me. So this huge choice I had, which one of these beliefs am I supposed to go with? I've had this awakening. I've had this, whether it was an angel or a demon, didn't matter to me anymore. Because if it was an angel, well, thank you. You woke me up. If it was a demon, well, you screwed up. You woke me up. I was no longer an atheist. Either way, I landed on my spiritual feet, and I was walking the path. I mean, it wasn't that much of a different path than I was walking before. I was raised properly. I was raised so that I was kind and charitable, and I try to be. I fail. We all do. We're not perfect beings. So this was not a very difficult transition for me when it came right down to it. But whether it was an angel or a demon or an ill-willed spirit, whatever you want to call it, a spaghetti monster, I don't care. The thing here is, it woke me. It said to me, well, I said to myself after it happened, you have to go down a path. You no longer have a choice of being an atheist. Your choice now has been made for you. You have been shown something. And if I walk away from that, I think that would have been very, very bad for me, and very bad for my soul. But I landed without a church. I landed without knowing where to go. I landed without knowing which one of these churches is God's choice. I always come back to during this time of my thinking, during my self-examination, I always come back to Noah's Ark and people who were anti-theist always try and use Noah's Ark as proof that, God doesn't exist, and they try and use the ark as something to prove that God doesn't exist. All the animals couldn't fit in the ark, okay? All the animals just couldn't get along. Okay, you can believe that. I choose to believe that a God, an entity, an all-powerful God, can create an ark that will hold all the animals. And this immediately starts the anti-theist down the road of math that was created by God. Math that says, let me prove it to you. And they will show me the dimensions of how big the ark was because of, the basics that are given in the Bible. And they go on and on about this. And then they get done and they say, so now do you understand? Then I usually look at them at that point and I say, I do understand. Do you understand that God could create an ark that was bigger on the inside than the outside? And that's where their arguments fall apart and they start saying that I believe in magic. I don't believe in magic. I believe that, there's nothing beyond the abilities of the Creator. It's that simple. And I've gone down that road with many people trying to convince me now to be an atheist, and it always falls apart for them at some point. And when it doesn't fall apart for them, when they walk away convinced that they won the argument, I walk away convinced that I still have my faith. But which faith? Which faith do I follow? None of them. And all of them. I don't know. In science, if you don't have the ability to say, I don't know, if you go into an experiment with a conception of how this experiment is going to come out, and you try to force the desired effect in that experiment, you're not doing science. You're trying to prove yourself right. When you do an experiment in science, no matter what the results, you have to accept it. Now, you have to verify it. There's a lot of steps you got to take. I'm not a scientist. Of course, in high school, we all took science. I hope. I'm not sure what they're teaching now. I had to take those 2 steps back even further from all of these religions that I had explored. And I'm looking at the people over at the Baptist church, and I'm looking at the people at the synagogue and at the mosque and at the Presbyterian church and at the Catholic church. And I'm thinking to myself, these people, they're part of this community, and they remain part of this community. At least in America, they have the freedom of choice to go to what church they want. Are all of these people in the right church? Are all of these people on the right path? I don't know. Let's look at it through the lens of, let's try to look at it through the lens of the Creator. Would He allow that? Would He allow all of these people to be convinced of the wrong choices? Are all of the people, let's take an example. Let's just say that the Presbyterians are right, and that a lot of the people in the Baptist church went over and checked out the Presbyterian church and then went over to the Baptist church. Are all the people that went to the Presbyterian church, checked it out, and decided this isn't for me and went back to the Baptist church, are they all damned to hell? I couldn't believe that. I know some of those people. Some of those people are very good people, would never hurt anybody. Some of those people are trying their best to do the right thing. So I couldn't buy it. I could not understand a Creator that would condemn all of these people because they made the wrong choice. Maybe they made the right choice. Maybe the Baptist church is where they need to be. And maybe the Presbyterian church is where the other people need to be. Catholic church, you get the point here. They're all taking a different path. They're all walking that path that perhaps God has set up so that they can reach the level of spiritual maturity to move on. Maybe the people in the synagogue are where they need to be. Maybe the people in the mosque are where they need to be. This is a very difficult thing to look at and decide they could all be right, because that leaves the person, in this case me, standing outside of all of these religious organizations saying they could all be right. They could. They can all be on different roads, different paths that lead to the same destination. I'm a truck driver, and I know that to go from Augusta, Georgia to Los Angeles, California, there are many, many highways that will get you there. There are many ways to get you there. And a lot of times you'll end up, crossing over and riding on the same highway as other people and then getting off and going a different way for a while and then coming back on and seeing those people again. You still get there. Even if you take tangents out of the way, even if you go to a bypass that takes you far afield, you can get to Los Angeles by going through Alaska. You can still get there. You've just gone way out of your way. But I'm looking at all these religious organizations, and none of them are for me. So then I had to ask myself, am I bound to hell because I haven't chose one of these churches who are self-confirming that they are the right church? Every one of those preachers are telling you that their church is the right church to come to. Every one of those synagogues, every one of those rabbis are telling you the same thing. Every one of those imams, mosque leaders are telling you that's the right church. That's the right religious organization. Not for me. I've not found one that's for me. So which church do I belong to? I don't know. And I finally started referring to the church as the church of I don't know, because none of these fit. None of these are the path I'm supposed to be on. To get to Los Angeles from Augusta, you have to cross many roads. Even if you are on roads, even if you are taking roads, you have to cross many other roads. Sometimes you have to walk. In my case, I'm not on a road. I'm not on a path. I'm walking through the woods. I'm walking between the roads. Occasionally I have to cross a road. There's a pretty big highway in my life right now, and the wife is going down it. So I'm kind of standing off in the woods by myself here, watching her go down it. Love her to death. I think she's on the right path for her. For me, not so much. That's where I found truth. That's where I found my path. That's where I found the Creator, God. I'm not the person who belongs to the Presbyterian Church, the Baptist Church, the synagogue, the mosque, the Methodist Church. That doesn't mean I don't respect your beliefs. That doesn't mean I don't want you to be where you're at. I think where you're at is incredible. If it's making you happy, if you're building community there, if you are teaching love, respect, and the ability for your congregants, your fellow congregants, to respect everybody else's beliefs and not infringe on their rights, I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're on the right path. If this is where God wants you, you should stay on that path. It's not the path that God wants me on. I'm out here doing other things. I'm out here saying prayers and not following a structured religion. And I know you've got a book. And in your book it says that you must do this. That's your book. It's not my book. It's not my book. I have many religious writings. I've read many religious writings in this. There's a Buddhist book sitting in on my nightstand because I found it interesting to read. I've read the Catholic Bible front to back many times, probably 4 or 5 times. I've read a Protestant Bible, the King James Version. Not a lot of difference. I mean, you can nitpick, but there's not a lot of difference. But it's not my book. It has influence on me. Not saying it doesn't. It's got some good things in it. Would never say it doesn't. It's not my path. God's laid out a different path for me. It's not a solitary path either. I know that you go through life and some things are labeled. In my mind, I call the church I belong to the church of I don't know. I meet fellow members of the church of I don't know all the time. They don't call it that. They haven't, for lack of a better word, codified it, titled it, named it. But after talking to them for a while, you find out, oh, this person's right in line with how I'm thinking. They just either don't know it or they haven't named it. I am a church member. I am a member of the church of I don't know. That doesn't mean I think your church is wrong. That doesn't mean that I think the people across the street from your church that are going to a different church, I don't think those people are wrong. I think there are many paths in this life. You're on a path, and I'm on a path. You're on a highway or a dirt road or a path. I'm out here on a different path. I'm walking through the woods. I'm crossing your path. I'm crossing your highway. Some of you, I'm crossing your superhighway, and I'm running across that one. But the analogy fits. I got no problem with where you're at. As long as you're not hurting people, as long as you're respecting other people's beliefs, I got no problem with that. I am blessed to be living in an America that allows me to believe whatever I want to believe. So are you. If you're in another country and they allow you to believe whatever you want to believe, we got it going on, don't we? There's much happiness to be found in that. Normally on Mondays I do a news story with Grok. I'm going to bypass that this Monday. I've been talking for a long time. I think we're going to wrap up the Church of I Don't Know here. Hopefully my wife can find some understanding after, 29 years and change. I hope that she can finally understand where I'm coming from. I've had a good life to this point. I have followed my own beliefs. I have prayed on the regular. I prayed last night, someone who is not doing well, and I spent a lot of time praying for him. Life is good. Life is very good. And I will continue to be a member of this church. Perhaps one day I'll take an on-ramp to a church that I fit in. I haven't found that church. And I am very content in the church of I Don't Know. It's Monday, and it's an early day for me, and I've got to edit this video. Gonna ride with a very good guy today and have a very good Monday. Gonna do my best. I hope that you all go out there and have a great Monday. No matter what church you're in, no matter what faith you follow, I hope that you go out there and find peace, love, and dream. Until next time, ciao.